listeners, welcome to a bit of a special episode, Kyle, because it's called CinemaCast. We're going to be talking to indie filmmaker Janek Ambros.
How's it going? Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It is quite the interesting turn of events when people reach out to us and are like, hey, we've heard about you. Would you like to discuss our movie? It's like weirdly fitting because we've never had that as a podcast, right? So
that's cool. Yeah. Where are you guys, by the way?
We're based out of Estevan, Saskatchewan.
So if you're in Saskatchewan, then are you guys Oilers or Flames fans?
I'm personally an Oilers fan, but I think that's more so because I grew up as, in an Oiler household compared to.
I'm more
Battle of Alberta. Okay.
Yeah. I'm more of a Jets fan myself. I go more eastward. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were friends before this podcast. I don't know if we can continue anymore.
It's weird.
I'm a diehard New Jersey Devils fan.
Oh, they're my favorite American team, definitely.
Why is it your favorite? I like that. Why?
Honestly, it's not a very good reason, but like, I used to have like NHL 2003 on the computer, and it was like super glitchy, and the only team I was allowed to, it would let me play as was the Devils. So
that's a perfectly good reason. So
yeah, no,
totally. That game was awesome. I used to play it on my computer too, which is hilarious. It's great.
Yeah, me and Cody have gotten into a weird amount of hockey arguments despite like none of us having like huge, like being like, I guess Cody's a bit of one, but we've had like a weird amount of controversy about
honestly, I think the reason why I've been such a big hockey fan is because like I've played a lot of NHL like games and so like even now today the people that I used to play NHL with are like, please come play NHL with us. We will buy you an Xbox if you need it so that you can come play NHL with us. It's weird, like.
So you did accept their terms and go play NHL with them, right?
No, I haven't, because I've got a brand new laptop that I bought for school, and I play most of my games on that, and it's been really stupidly hard to switch over to a console if you have a $1,600 laptop just kind of sitting off to the side. See, I can justify buying a laptop because I can use it for school. I can't justify buying an Xbox.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a little bit tougher, Can't really use it as a write-off,
Well, see, that's the fun thing about being a director is you just say, I need stuff for movie making, and they just
exactly. Like I need to play. I need to play like 15 hours of NHL 2020 to help my screenplay. They're like,
yeah.
I know like this is a bit of a funny story, but like one of our early reviews was about the Brandon Steer movie Velocipaster, and like he had in one of the stories between him getting that like the Velociraptor costume from that is like he made it in like grade 10 and they never took it back from him, even though they never made that like grade 10 student film.
So actually, sorry, I'd like to correct him on this. His school bought a Velocipaster to be used for a student film. And so they never asked him back for it, so he just kind of kept it, and it was like a $15,000 like Velocipaster suit that they just kind of lost and never wanted to do anything with it. So
that's a shame.
Yeah. But yeah, this is our big talking to with the fancy Los Angeles director. So that's something. First American on the show.
From upstate New York, though. Just,
yeah. True.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I will say I do love Canada. Mostly, I wouldn't say mostly because of hockey, but also I used to go to Montreal a lot because I'm from Albany. So it's like, me and my buddies used to just like before we were allowed to legally drink in America, we just go to Montreal and just do just insane things in Montreal for weekends. It was a good time. I really like Montreal. And Canada more broadly. I'm a big fan. I was just listening to I just read Ken Dryden's new book. Do you know Ken Dryden?
Not personally. Canada's not that small.
No, I think he actually ended up. He was the goalie for the Canadians, and then I think he actually ended up getting into public office, if I'm not mistaken.
Could be. A few
Huh.
of them have.
So maybe you'll have some insight on this. How do we break into the Canadian market?
Yeah, that's.
What do you mean?
Our
Yeah.
podcast is like mainly American based.
Oh, just start talking. Just have me come on and have the American come on and weirdly talk about hockey, and that'll inversely get more Canadian followers. So it's this weird roundabout way to get to get more Canadian people by having me come on and just like scream about 1990s like playoff like rivalries. That's it. And then you'll have tons of people from Saskatoon and Regina and Edmonton just tuning in. That's it.
Because we did like Goon and we've done the movie Tusks and like we've tried to hit the Canadian like movie scene, but it's never kind of really expanded past that.
You should have Jay Baruchel come on. I think he lives in Canada. I don't think he's even in LA. He's very I think he's actively trying to do more hockey movies. Goon was awesome. I really liked Goon. I will say that I'm working on a few hockey projects. I am waiting for the day where there's a hockey movie that's like Slapshot's good, but like obviously people get like, oh, you don't like I like Slapshot, but it's just there's not like a Raging Bull hockey movie, and it's like, or it's about like enforcers, and it's just like there hasn't been that great hockey movie. And no offense to the ones that were made. I mean, like The Rocket, I think was a cool one. That was the French Canadian one. Goon was obviously awesome, but I just mean a more, I don't know. There's definitely some like type of and I'm working on a few, but perhaps another day we can discuss that.
I think it'd be like a good one to have like a one on the Canada-Russia series from I forget the year, but I think that would make like there is one, but I don't know how high like a good budget on that would make like a really good movie, because that involves like
I'm so bad with that one because I'm just like everybody, because it's obviously like when I read books about hockey or whatever, everyone discusses that. But as an American, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on here. Canada versus Russia. Like, it just, I'm instinctively like brainwashed to just start like talking about Mike Eruzione in the Miracle on Ice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like I mean that's the
Maybe
first thing is
Netflix will do something with it.
maybe that's the big thing. I think it's like a more impressive feat than what Miracle on Ice was, and it's like includes like the closest thing like the Canadians have done to like a political assassination, as far as I know, when like one of the Canadian players just like straight up breaks the best Soviet player's ankle in the middle of the game just to turn the series around.
Yeah, no, in America, we rarely talk about that in the sports world, and it's like I'll usually hear about it like if they talk about it on TSN or if I'm reading like a book about hockey, like it's obviously always talked about, but just like we're all about Miracle on Ice here. Lake Placid, 1980, just inundated with that.
Yeah, my hockey. I'm watching a bit of a hockey television show right now from the '90s. And it's not as impressive as it sounds because it's the '90s Mighty Ducks cartoon, which is just fantastic. It's so just the inevitable conclusion of every stupid thing that ever happened in the '90s, like bringing into like its logical conclusion, and you just can't look away.
I haven't seen that, but there's another one I like, that Youngblood. That's like the most ridiculous hockey movie ever, with Rob Lowe and Patrick Swayze and like Keanu Reeves. It's ridiculous. That's almost feels like a midnight movie. It's just so weird. It's just like it's bizarre. It's a bizarre movie, but it's fun. It's like a cool movie.
It's probably on the short list to be reviewed on the podcast at some point. That has been mentioned to me. It just hasn't made the list so far. But I think moving on from hockey.
Yeah, like there was 15 minutes set aside apparently.
Yeah. So Janek has directed the film Money, Fascism, and Sort of Acid, which is a 35-minute
some sort of acid.
It's a 35-minute long short film. I guess bring up let's tell the audience where they can find that, Janek, if you so please.
Yeah, you can. I believe I believe it's Amazon Prime, Google Play, iTunes, and just kind of mostly the VOD platforms. But I believe it's on Amazon Prime right now, so it would be and through the summer. So it would be if you have Amazon Prime, it'd be free. But you can also just get it at like Google Play and iTunes and all that.
actually have your IMDb page up here. Is it true you're an Aries
I
sign?
am. I don't know anything about any of that. I
No.
just it just says that like it. I have no idea. No, and yeah, it's all I know some people are into that, and that's cool. But I am just ignorant when it comes to the signs, and I don't know.
It's just really weird that they would just
Oh,
volunteer that
it is weird. I think
information.
they
I mean,
just do
yeah.
that with
Anybody who
every. If
can.
you're just if your birthday, it's on your birthday's on there, they'll just be like, "That's what you are," and it's just like,
Yeah.
okay.
It seems like something the weird celebrity crowd would get into that, like would like peruse MDB trying to find personal information about celebrities. That seems like that something like that sort of weirdo would want to get into. But yeah, so we watched a little bit of that for the film. Just content warning for those of you who want to go look at it. It contains a good bit of flashing lights, so if you're like photosensitive, I mean, watch with caution. But otherwise, it is really decent to watch. It's three shorts. I would say, correct? That's the number.
Yeah, it's essentially like an anthology of of several shorts that kind of thematically weave a little bit about power and fascism and etc.
I guess one of the main questions I have here is that because I've watched the movie and Kyle's watched the movie, but you actually directed the movie. Like, how did that differ from what you had in writing? Because you also wrote the movie. How did that translate into film for you? Like, did you get what you're expecting? You
Yeah,
know?
so it depends. So a lot of the it's kind of broken up into several ones. So I did them at different times, and they're obviously if since you guys seen they're much different. Like or I hope they actually kind of feel like they're part of the same thing. But they when I made them, they were very much separated. It wasn't until later I was like, oh, okay, I'm tackling the same themes. I'm going to put them into one piece, right? So when I wrote, I can even just go through each one. Like Closing Bell, which is the first chapter, which is about the '08 housing crisis and this broker who has like a few minutes to go before closing bells, the market's crashing. That one I actually wrote. I studied economics and I used during the '08 crisis. So what I did was we were constantly learning about what's going to happen, et cetera. So I kind of put my thesis, my for school for the degree, the last thing. I put that into screenplay format and had the idea of having this broker like going through everything in his head as fast as he could. So that one I kind of weirdly like wrote, but I was adapting it from my own economic journal of what was happening at that time. So it was a lot of like the math and the algorithms and stuff are real. Like they're not like, I mean, I guess people would presume so, but yeah, they're kind of taken. I adapted it from my homework, which is bizarre. But and then May 15th in Paris, I kind of wrote. It's very which is the one about the story of 1800s France, where the establishment politicians were kind of neglecting the working class, and it kind of like came into the form of this horrible dictator. You can make whatever slot whatever example you want to use around the world right now. But that one I wrote very much just like it was done in like a history book. Like it was just like very clean. Red, Blue, and Purple is the third one, which is like this very experimental. Just like that one I didn't write. That one the Red, Blue, and Purple chapter is the chapter where the man is in the chair and he's being kind of attacked by these supposedly opposing ideologies. But that one was very just like experimental, cerebral. Like I didn't write anything for that too much. I just kind of wrote like a one page like little like, okay, this beginning, middle, and end. And then Son of Man, the World War II one, is something I definitely did write, and it was the earliest one I did, and that chapter's it's the World War II one in black and white. If you watch, you'll notice that one, and that's adapted from Dostoevsky's The Grand Inquisitor. There's a parable called, adapted from his book The Brothers Karamazov, and it's a parable called The Grand Inquisitor in the book, and I adapted that. But instead of the Spanish Inquisition, I put it to Croatia during World War II because there was a lot of ties. It's almost like a modern, like an Inquisition in itself, because the Ustaša, which was the Croatian Nazi regime. They had a lot of ties to the Vatican, and they were actually very, pro. They would do what they were doing in the name of Catholicism, which is obviously insane. So that was a very weird one. But yeah, I wrote so a few of them I wrote very intentionally and like went by script, and then others I didn't even write. I essentially was just using editing as a way to tell the story.
Huh.
I think one thing I want to touch on here is like you're a bit more of a like I'd say more on the political left.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I try not to like with the. Yeah, no, for sure. I totally am. Like, I definitely when I do these kind of things, like I try to like make it more art and more posing questions, and rather than giving answers. Like, my first feature was a documentary on the war on terror and how it impacts civil liberties, and that one's obviously since it's a documentary, I'm just more openly saying like, hey, what we're doing abroad and bombing these foreign countries is just wrong, and it feels, I guess, more like I'm preaching something, but that's fine. But with these, they're a little bit more experimental. So, but yes, just as we just are chatting, like yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the point of what I was bringing it up is because you brought up like your background in like academic economics, and like that's something that a lot of people view as like more of a I mean, obviously the right political spectrum is a little bit way oversimplified to like to really honestly look at politics from. But economics is looked as more a right thing. But you do see actually when you really get into it, like left economic theory.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, it's absolutely is like this. It has so much to do with education, right? Like the systems we have in America, and I would imagine even just Canada or any Western country, right? Economists, I mean, it's economists are totally, yeah, you think more, if you think finance, you think more like conservatism, fiscal policy, like tightening up the belt of like budgets and all that stuff. But like, no, I mean, there's John Maynard Keynes was a big, was the biggest economist, I think, in the past 100 years, because he started to say, wait, maybe we can actually spend money using fiat currency and central banking to really expand, like during the New Deal and stuff like that. So, I mean, you can even go back and say, Karl Marx was an economist. So it's like it just depends what you're taught. It just depends what school system you're being taught. But I would even say more broad, like even regardless, like if you're studying economics, the right wing likes to hijack economists, like John Smith was Adam Smith was obviously like this capitalist. He's kind of like the most known like capitalist, economist, philosopher from like, the Revolutionary War, all that. But he was very, it wasn't so like, oh, capitalism, free markets. That's the kind of nonsense. Like that's a very oversimplified view by like libertarians that kind of just like pretend that like his writing was just like free markets. Like it's just ridiculous. Like he talks a lot about like, the problems that can occur. And, obviously, if you get into stuff like Capital by Marx, that's just a big critique of capitalism. But like, yeah, so I would say that there definitely is like people perceive like, oh, economics, like you're in the East Coast, you're studying economics, you're involved in especially if you lead into finance, then it's maybe perceived a little more like a right wing thing. But no, definitely there's like, economics goes both ways,
Yeah, there's a lot more complexity to it. Like I've met like other people, quote unquote, like you that have definitely like done their education in more business and economic stuff that have like come to the point like, hey, we're doing all of this wrong, and it's more so like you get like an impression that economics is like inherently right wing is because the right wing ones have a lot of money, which is valued in the way that we've structured society throughout the world, really. And so that's led to a disproportionate amount of preference for right wing economic theory, especially like particularly since like a resurgence in the
Reagan.
70s, I would say. Yeah, I would say even like Nixon. Yeah, Nixon was
Yeah, I
kind
was
of a
just gonna
preamble.
say Reagan. I mean, Totally, and Nixon, ironically, was one of the, So no, but Reagan, but like just to your point though, it's like to the point where we literally called economics Reaganomics. Like what? So yeah, like Art Laffer and those guys, like that whole idea of like trickle down economics was such a big thing in the 80s that it really kind of hijacked the idea of like what economics and what the Federal Reserve and what what type of monetary policy and fiscal policy we can do for the people. And before it was just basically like just cheap cash to Wall Street. But it is, I should say, with Closing Bell, the first chapter that we're kind of talking about, that obviously was about the 08 crisis and what the housing crisis and what the response was. So they were trying to do TARP and the stimulus bill, and the broker's trying to go through in his head, okay, what's going to happen? And he's saying, well, we're kind of screwed. But there's a part where he actually does the multiplier effect, which is basically just saying how much money can we spend on the economy, and that's from John Maynard Keynes, and he was a Keynesian economist who said we need to spend money. Right now, at least in America, I wish I knew more about what Trudeau was doing about fiscal policy. I'm not the best at Canadian politics, but in the United States, right now we're dealing with that like crazy. So because right now we're finally. Basically, but after the housing crisis in 07, we took a more austere. We went to austerity, same with everybody else in the West. We basically said, well, no, we're gonna be very careful with spending. We're gonna give money to Wall Street so it stays stabilized. But more recently, since COVID, you're seeing a totally different thing here. You're seeing the Federal Reserve and politicians, particularly the Democrats. But I will say, even prior to Biden getting in office, the Federal Reserve has been pushing for real big monetary policy because they're starting to look back to the things like the 40s when we actually spent money on things like the New Deal and all these things. And people were like, oh, it's this radical left stuff. It's like, no, it's just going back to like Dwight Eisenhower economics, like when he basically, he built the highways. And so we got so scared of spending money. And yet at the same time, we still have spent tons of money on these ridiculous wars and stuff. But we're just now starting to see America actually, and I think in Europe too, you're starting to see it. Like I said, I don't know too much about Canada, about saying, oh, maybe we can spend money if you're in an economic situation on Main Street and people, as opposed to just funneling Wall Street and basically having socialism for the rich and then capitalism for the poor. And I think you're starting to see, so there's something ironic about, people on the right wing who are very cozy with big business and big oil and stuff, and they get government subsidies all the time. So they would all talk about socialism. That's socialism. That's socialism for the rich. I think Benjamin Franklin called it lemon socialism. I know Martin Luther King talked a lot about capitalism for the rich, socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor. It's just something that's really important. I do think the tide's turning a little bit. I don't think it's out of them being altruistic. I just think it's out of necessity. They're saying, well, we can't have inequality get too bad. Like I think some people even call it like rich people even call it riot tax. You know what I mean? So we are seeing a tide turn. So yeah, sorry for rambling so much.
No, yeah. Yeah, it's very much like we've come to like very much demonize the poor and like treat them as like they're all lazy. I've like kind of said at some points that like the right likes to pretend that like desperate people don't exist, is that like people are never like put into a corner with them. It's always your people there's always like a huge contingent of people that are like lazy, and I don't think that's an honest portrayal of like how we got where we are, because like we put an onus on like working. Yeah,
Jesus Christ, no,
like we put a big onus on like us working like a 40-hour work week. The 40-hour work week was the compromise between working infinite hours. And haven't really touched it since the 40s. So I don't like buy into this idea like you need 40 hours to be a productive person. It's not like something that was scientifically calculated to be like, this is how much you work or else you're lazy. And we very much do view things like that.
No, you hit it on the head with saying that it came from, it was just a negotiation essentially by FDR's Secretary of Labor, Francis Perkins, to say, in the 40s to say, okay, they're not going to work 24 hours a day, maybe 40 hours. I mean, like it was a negotiation to go to a more, humane level. Now, look, some people can work more. I mean, it depends
Oh
what
yeah.
type of work, right? Because some people are like, oh, I work 40 hours. It's like, it depends what kind of labor it is and stuff like that. But like, because a lot of the people who are owners and stuff like that, and look, I'm a small business owner myself, so I'm not like, sitting here saying like screw management, like going through it. But it's like, but like to some degree, a lot of these people who own the business they work 24 hours a day. But it's like, yeah, but you control the profit, like, so then it's not really like you're you know what I mean. So it's like, yeah, it's the whole stigma of people are being like lazy is literally just like rooted in all sorts of very problematic things. Like it's definitely not that.
And I think a interesting thing to bring up, especially like when the point of view of Closing Bell, this particular short, is that you don't necessarily need to assume that the narrator of that is like saying that from a particularly left leaning point of view. Like it's not as if like people on the right are like totally unaware that we did the wrong thing in like 2008. It's they disagree about how you might fix that and like what's exactly to blame, but it's hard to walk away from that and say, hey, this was the right thing to do and this was definitely how we should have invented this. So I have a very big fascination with like characters that like can come to with like not breaking their character and like portraying this guy as hey, he's not necessarily a leftist, but he's definitely seen what's really happening, and you can't look at what's really happening and necessarily come away from it saying this is good. And I think you do a good job of that in this scene.
Yeah, thanks. And honestly, I will say that the broker, I would say go as far as to say the broker in this short. I would say he's kind of neither. I mean, so many people who work in Wall Street, they don't care. I mean, like, of
No.
course they care about like tax cuts and stuff like that. And but like ultimately, he's presenting. He's putting a piece of paper in front of himself and saying what's going on. Now, I will say he's probably not even left at all. I mean, it's probably the way it's even written. It's more like it definitely is more of this. Like when he talks about the multiplier effect, which is just essentially just another word for a stimulus package, he says, well, that won't work, right? So he's kind of already throwing that away. When really, if he was like this good, like really like understood it, he'd be like, well, why don't we just make whatever they're proposing instead of $800 billion, why not like what we did during COVID, like a couple trillion? And that was really, I think, the answer. But instead they went about this way of just like bailing out banks and not doing anything for Main Street. So really, if the character in Closing Bell was like not a broker, he'd probably stop and be like, well, why don't we spend money on the people and help people do mortgage relief? But of course he doesn't. He's just like, I don't know, we're all fucked. You know what I mean? Like, and if anything, he seems like he's more like against the idea of keep propping up the system through like a Keynesian economic way. So yeah, I would say he's more just an elusive mind of what he might be, but he definitely sees an issue.
Yeah, he's very much a character. Like he's doing what's in front of him for like his own benefit. Like he's like a guy
Right, exactly.
picking up a Hyundai on the way out of a sinking ship. Yeah.
Did you guys see Big Short?
I've seen part of it. I haven't seen the whole thing.
Did I? No.
It's good. It's a fun movie. It's definitely very cool.
I think while we're on to this, because this I'm gonna go on to something that like affects most of the shorts, is like your use of stock footage, and I thought that was like wonderfully done. It didn't feel like you were doing it like to save money, quote unquote. It might have been a benefit, but you've definitely used it very effectively in this, and it paired it with like editing techniques and filters and colors and good music also. But yeah, no, I just thought that it's a very wonderful use of stock footage there. I thought it was all very well done, and like done in such a way that didn't feel like you were just watching a very basic documentary. And like especially like May 15th comes right after, which is, I think, the more heavily stock footage one, if I'm not mistaken, and that's done very much to pair.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you the stock footage stuff. Oh man, I love stock footage. I'm such a loser. Like I love stock footage so much. There's something just ineffable. I can't really describe it about old footage. So like I love silent films. I love old movies, especially not just movies of like, Hollywood, like movies from the 30s of people dancing and stuff like that. But like really, like you look at some of the old films from all over the world, it's just there's something very there's more weight to watching something, for me at least. I think to a lot of people, when you're watching something knowing that existed 100 years ago, and it's like that person's probably has passed a while ago. There's something kind of like, I don't know, just like, not to get too goofy about it, but like, yeah, there is something kind of like spiritual even about that. But like, so stock footage is very interesting to me, and I try to. I really got into it because I really so as in May 15th in Paris, Barbara DeFina was the producer on it, and she produced Martin Scorsese's films for like 3 decades. She's produced Goodfellas, Casino, all this stuff, and so I was really fortunate enough to have her kind of help me with the project, and she's kind of a mentor of mine. And really, what it comes down to with a lot of the stock footage stuff is it derives from like my obsession of editing. So before kind of doing directing and producing and writing and kind of that kind of stuff, I was really into. I didn't have money to direct anything, so it actually is exactly what you said. It was. I wouldn't even say it was to save money. It was to say that I had absolutely no money and that I couldn't surely shoot anything. So what I did was I started collecting tons of stock footage. And this was before you could just rip it on YouTube. It was on like Behringer Archives and it was fun. I mean, it was just kind of like I like history, so I like film, so it just kind of, it made sense. And I was like, and I like editing, so I was like, so I started to kind of like tell stories through stock footage. So with May 15th in Paris, it's with Red, Blue, and Purple, the third chapter. That one's I did shoot on 16 millimeter. An actor, Stephen Maloney, in a chair, and kind of use that as like there was something I shot, but so much of that was like stock footage. But I try to do it in experimental ways. Like I try to really do frame by frame editing. I try to do a lot of like color correction. I try to do a lot of, I don't know, just very bizarre editing tricks that I learned from Craig McKay, who is D.D. Gardner's editor on Reds, the Warren Beatty film. Like he would give me a little bit like tips here and there. So I really reached out to some really great people and tried to get advice on like what movies should I watch. So like one thing I watched a lot was Eisenstein films. Do you guys know Eisenstein? He did October, 10 Days That Shook the World, and then like Battleship Potemkin, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was in the 20s, and he was like he was like rapid speed editing. So like in America, you were still kind of doing these, I wouldn't call them slow, but like it wasn't jump cuts, right? So like in Russia though, they were doing Eisenstein was doing basically like hardcore, like really intense editing, to the point where when he was editing, his hands would be bloody. Like that's a true, like when he was doing it, that's how much he was stitching. Like it would look like it's higher octane, fast cutting editing than like you'd see even in some like Gaspar Noé films. Like it's really bizarre. So he was really ahead of that. So I was really into watching those. So I used that a lot. But May 15th in Paris actually is all stuff I shot in Paris. So that's actually not stock footage.
Yeah, no, I was wondering that. Yeah.
So actually, the only thing that has stock footage is May 15th, or I'm sorry, is Red, Blue, and Purple, the 3-minute very experimental one. But May 15th in Paris, I actually was I was really fortunate enough to go to Paris and shoot that. So that was cool.
How can you justify saying you don't have money and then go, but I gone to Paris to do directing work?
Because I shot that in 2017. So the ones I started doing earlier were like the ones that like Red, Blue, and Purple I shot well before. But with that one, that was still, I visited my sister and I had a camera. Like I didn't have like a crew. There was no other. I had my really talented friend Natalie Samil narrate it in French, but that was just me and my Canon T3i and 2 lenses, and that's it. And so I would just run around with my family when we would do stuff, and I just had my camera. I did make shot lists though. So I made I pretended I was it was a real shoot and was okay, here's my shot list. I need to get this. So I wrote it and then got the shot list. And then when I would walk around Paris, because my sister was doing semester abroad there, I was with my mom. I would literally just have a huge Excel sheet of all the shots I needed. And then I was just if we were walking some around, I'm oh, there's the place where I need to get my shot. Hold on 1 second. And I run over there and, and I had this little mini tripod that was 4 inches. And I would I don't even know how and then I just, cut it all myself and stuff. So really it's even the ones that I did have a camera and I shot, they still were,
So one of the shots that I really enjoyed was the shots of the people skateboarding. And then the people skateboarding decides them to record the people skateboarding. And then you recording the people skateboarding and also recording the person skateboarding. There's a weird cameraception thing going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that part, I was really just going for more of this, kind of a little bit more of this non-proper kind of, because before then, it's I get into the French royalty and that, and so I was kind of trying to do a more Kubrick style, classical music, static shots, and then when I got more when I went to Saint Denis and more Paris is a city, not just as a tourist site. I wanted to kind of put a little bit more life into it. So I definitely was trying to just throw, put a bunch of stuff in a blender and just kind of, I was really into La Haine. Did you guys see that? Yeah. So that's obviously a big influence on those parts where it's just I made skateboard videos as a kid, when I was 12 and 13 and stuff like that. So it was skateboarding stuff was super fun to shoot. I used to skateboard and make skateboard videos, as embarrassing as it is, but it is fun.
Yeah, I think you really have a talent for stitching together not obviously these sort of montage-esque piece where you take a bunch of disparate footage and blend it together. I think you're one of the I don't, maybe this is just speaking to my ignorance, but you're one of the few guys I've seen that can really pull off those sort of mushing together of I guess stock footage or in other films maybe B-roll footage and making it very entertaining. I did also appreciate one of the interesting things was about the music during a sequence in France where you showed off the French rap, and that's something that it always impresses me when a filmmaker puts out music that I would never have heard of. I did not I would not have realized French rap was a thing before I saw this. And I'm I mean, I think intellectually.
Yeah, no, there's a really great artist there. All around Europe. I mean, there's such a fantastic music, industry and just arts and cultural thing there that's just awesome. That I just in America, in English speaking countries, you just aren't. I feel like one isn't aware of as much, but it's very that was really fun to do. But with editing though, the best editor. If anybody's interested in editing their own projects, is Thelma Schoonmaker. She's one of the best filmmakers ever. She's the she's the editor for Martin Scorsese's films. Now it's important to note though that she actually hired Scorsese. So she back in the '60s was an editor. And she was all right, you're pretty good at filmmaking. You could be my assistant editor on a film called, I think it was Woodstock, they cut together, and other films. So she's the best, I think, editor in film history. And she's, I think anybody into editing needs to, because it's not just those Scorsese's really cutting this. No. She was, he's his mentor in many ways, or at least early on. And when it came to editing, I don't want to speak too much about directing, of course, but no, that it's a very interesting. I really highly recommend people listen to what she has to say about editing. And Dee Dee Gardner too is a great editor. She started the jump cut, at least in America. So yeah, so there's definitely, if anybody's into it, Thelma Schoonmaker is awesome.
Cody, do you have anything you wanted to get out of the way? I'm still thinking back if I had anything.
I do, because you're a director, and there's so many questions I've never gotten to ask a director, especially somebody who's done indie films and small. How do you go to a production company? I guess you also run a production company, so I guess that's I've hit like every single nail on the head there. How do you, as a production company, decide on the films you're making? Like, how do you, if I just came up to somebody, a director on the street, and said, "Here's my story," where does that go from there? Like, where's the
Oh
process?
yeah, so no, that's a great question. I think so with this, it's almost like tabling this film on the side, because with the way I did this was such like a more experimental avant-garde kind of endeavor that I was like able to piece through and put it on my company's slate, just because it was like I was the director. It was very easy to just do it on my own because I also run the company. But
Mhm.
that's a really good question. I think it's really important people really ask that about how companies, like, because if you're a filmmaker and you want to tell your story, well, if you want your story to be told, because you ain't telling it, you know what I mean? Like, if you're
Yeah.
trying to get it told through a company that's gonna actually take it on, how it works is basically you have so company A sits and says, okay, well, we can do 6 or just 4 movies a year, right? They probably have hundreds of they have tons of projects coming in, tons of screenplays that come in through the agencies. And what they do is they see which one can really kind of package well together. So meaning that if they have this one project and it fits with this one actor, because it's really important that when you try to assemble who you want to cast, that if you really want to get it done at least quickly, and quickly it still can take a very long time, but you want somebody who has something that the foreign sales agents will say, oh, well, yeah, well, we can get some territories around the world to pre-sell. So what you'll do is you'll get a cast member, and then suddenly, because that cast member is attached, you'll have people saying, well, we'll pre-buy your movie, and then that's how you get a lot of it funded. And then the company who's willing to kind of orchestrate all this then puts in money, some of their own money, as equity. So it's kind of complicated, but I will say, though, I think one thing that I think I don't like that system, because what it does is it hurts newer filmmakers and newer actors. And when I mean that, I kind of mean a little bit more of new voices broadly. So it's because it's what it is. The models, it's very old. Like sometimes countries are years behind. So it's like yeah. So if you're if you're a new voice to the industry, there's a lot of barriers to entry. So one way to kind of circumvent that is really trying to keep the budget low. It's like trying to see how much of it you can do on your own. I think is a really important thing. Like if you have a script that says that it's a smaller project, and you try to whittle it down so you can go and shoot it, even maybe with your friends, or you try to raise money a little bit here and there, or maybe try to find some sort of grant system, then I think that you're better off doing that. Because if you're writing a screenplay and you want a big company to do it, even if you're lucky enough and you do everything right and you get the manager and agent to submit it and they like it, you're not directing the film. I mean, obviously, they're just going to go and put it in their slate, and it might never get made. Obviously, you'll get paid, which is great, and you got to make sure that when you do those things, that you, if you're a writer, you have to make sure that they make it WGA. Like if there's any filmmakers out there who are like trying to do this, like always make sure that you have an entertainment lawyer look, because this company will screw you if they end up making it bigger. They'll put you as source material. So if anybody's listening that's trying to get their scripts out there, really make sure that you have an entertainment lawyer look at it if a company's ever interested in optioning your material. But yeah, no. So I think to answer your question, it depends on the project. But if you were to choose, do I want to bring this to a company? Then you have to know you're just giving your script to them, which is fine. If you want to be a writer, there's nothing wrong with that. And you get money, and you just hope they make it. Or what I think more writer directors should do is just try to make it yourself, especially if it's your first short or first feature or second feature. Even is just try to do everything as contained as possible, because technology, it's important to try to. It's like you can make stuff cheaper now as opposed to 40 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's like you can go and shoot stuff and cut it all yourself. And I mean, most of these projects, Son of Man, I had quite a few people helping me on that one. I've had a very good crew on that. But the other ones were all just essentially just me and the actor, because it's just cheaper. If you don't have the money, because film's expensive. It's the most expensive. It's like paintbrush, film. Like Orson Welles said, like 5% of his life was paraphrasing. 5% of his life was directing movies. 95% of the rest of his life was trying to raise money for movies. So it's a pain in the ass.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's like,
It's definitely a blessing, like doing. It's a bit of a blessing doing it in a modern age, because like I've done like we've done a few films, like David Cronenberg's first film. He had to film it on a camera that was so loud he could not have native audio. So like that's something that a modern filmmaker doesn't have to deal with, and that's like such a privilege. It's obviously still hard, but it's like those little things you can appreciate when you really go back in the film industry.
oh no, of course. I mean, the idea of Final Cut or Adobe Premiere. I mean, like imagine if you would just go and make something and then you had to use a machine to cut it, or even going further back, your like physically with your hands. I mean, it's totally different. You just plop it on the Final Cut. So it's really just, and it's by no means am I saying it's easy to go. It's not, but it's like it's and you do need the resources of a computer, and these things are expensive too. So I do think, though, I think sometimes can be a better route for someone to try to see if they can do it with the money they can, and not to be too concerned about what it looks like, and more about what it's saying, what the story is, because you don't need money to write. Like that is a big asset. If you can write something great and just shoot the bare bones of it, that could end up being a great thing. If you just spend all your money on cameras and lenses and you just shoot something that doesn't really say anything, then no one's really going to care. So I would say to young filmmakers is don't be intimidated by like not having the best stuff. Just try to have good performances and a good story, and maybe try to say something with the movie that's unique. Because one thing, there's so many movies now, like indie films, that I think it's important for people to try to make something that like stands out a little bit, whether that be there's so many ways to do that, but yeah.
It's one of the finance part is like something that's really held back certain genres. Like cyberpunk's the big one, because like cyberpunk's a difficult thing to probably get funding for in its purest form, because those movies are like, the protagonists of most of those books are like, hey, you know what I love? Psychedelics, and I love them unconditionally. And you know what I hate? The guy who paid for this movie. So that's always a difficult
Right.
sell to a producer, I imagine, which is why we only get like a few of them at a time, which is sad. And
Right.
really,
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. The financing aspect. It's always been, because it's a art form that requires money, a lot of money to make the art. It's just always going to be. It always has been this fight between art and commerce, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, if you can kind of, when I was starting, I was trying to like look at people like, what they did. So I had a more economic background, but I still wanted to be a filmmaker, but I kind of knew, well, money, if you understand maybe the money, then maybe you can kind of get some of it to make your movie. Because like Coppola is a big inspiration of mine. I was really lucky enough to like even talk to him once about and ask him some of these things, and he's very much like I'm gonna be the producer and understand the money, so that I don't have to ask for, so I can essentially take care of that myself, and not maybe have some other executive producer who has a more like dubious intent of what he wants to do, and take away the creative really, or maybe what he's trying to say. So it's like, the more autonomy you can try to create for yourself, the better, because then you're essentially more in control. So I definitely would recommend people to, if they want to get into filmmaking, is to really learn the finance aspect. So then you're not like just at mercy of somebody else who understands it, and you don't know what their what their plan is always.
Side note on this: our friend of the cast, Curtis McGilvery, he has a film degree, and part of his current degree, part of his process of getting that was he had to take some business classes. So that's a thing you gotta learn no matter what if you do that. So it's important to realize finances. Yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I think this came up last night when we were doing another episode for the podcast. We did Braveheart last night, and like, so we put forth the question is of, do we see that budget on film in Braveheart?
Let me see what the budget was.
It's 70 million approximately.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see a big chunk of it on film, but no, you obviously have a lot of there's like I can't speak for the exact film Braveheart. I don't want to, but like no, and typically like yeah, I mean yes, I mean but like I don't even know how to really like how like what does that really mean? It's like yeah, there's some people getting paid more than it's like you know what I mean? It's like I don't think there was some weird thing where they're like okay, $53 million budget and they're like let's give 20% to this one. No, I think ultimately even with the big films, you're trying to make it work, but. Yeah, I mean, there's probably people getting producer fees and shit. I don't know.
So, how do you, as a director, measure the success of your work? I know that you've been in the Sundance circuit, stuff like that.
No, it's. I mean, as I've had as a producer, I've had some, some the Sundance and TIFF and stuff like that. But no, as a director, I'm still looking for success. I mean, I'm not successful. I mean, I don't consider myself successful. It's like, but no, I would to answer. I think your question maybe more like, well, really the meaning of success and stuff is like, all that get into all that. But it's like, no, I mean, I don't know. It's like making movies with your friends is like very fun. Like that should be. Like if you're worried about if you're making movies for success, then it's just like then it's not gonna work. Like I don't mean the film; it could be a great film, but like you're just as a person, it's just like if you're thinking about the end result the entire time about any of that, like the success should be in making it. Like for me personally, I like if the most happy I am when in the process of making movies is when I feel like I got editing right. So like if I do a cut and I'm like, oh, I'm like, I get excited. I literally jump up and down. Like, and there's no feeling like that after. I mean, I like want to like throw up during a premiere. Like I get really like freaked out. Like I get anxiety. I hate it. I don't want to ever go to it's just really uncomfortable and weird. But no, I would say the success. It's not just like corny. I'm like the success is the journey, but it's like it is though. Like it is true. Like if it's like I don't know. That's obviously now it would be different if I was like a really like traditionally like a successful like or I'd be like well the success is when I like win my award. But it's like I don't know. I think even then it's like you just have to have fun doing it and just find like the little wins while you're making it and then hope people like it. That's about it.
So just pretty much make it and then roll the dice is what.
But enjoy making it. Enjoy making it. Like that's the key. Is if you're not enjoying making it, then it's kind of like I don't know. I'm not really sure the point of doing it. I mean, like of course there are annoying parts of making movies, but it's like you should find some levels of happiness in the process of making the movie. And some people it's in the writing process. Some people it's in the working with actors. Some people it's with editing. Probably a little bit more like me. But like. Yeah, you got to find something you're just thrilled about and feel that level of success while you're doing it, and not be too concerned about like, the result and money, and all these things.
For what it's worth, my experience with like putting out podcasts and eventually other stuff is like getting it out into the world and like getting the stuff that's like existing on like the mind plane and like making it into something more material, and that's something that like I take a lot of intrinsic joy from, and I think that's a productive mindset, at least for me. And you gotta
yeah I think probably I would probably with almost everything, right? It's like if you're in sports, it's like there's probably that same type of philosophy that you should at least have some of it, it's like because I get it, some people are very like determined, they'll never satisfied, but it's like I don't know. It's just I definitely tried to find that at least. I don't know.
So I think we're getting to the hour mark. Do you want to talk about your next movie that's going to be coming out over the summer?
Yeah. So we're looking at it. We're waiting on a release date now. It should be like end of summer, and it's called Mondo Hollywoodland. And this, I was just talking about making movies with your friends, and a lot of the ones we were discussing today, I mostly some of them were doing them on my own. The Son of Man was the exception, though. But with Mondo, it's a psychedelic feature about this like just groovy mushrooms dealer who traverses through Hollywood to with the man from the fifth dimension and tries to find the meaning of the word Mondo. And it's a totally ridiculous, bizarre movie about this guy and these kind of different people in this community who all have their own little story going on, and it's all very weird. It's all very very bizarre, and it's like a throwback to the '60s like counterculture movements. Like Dennis Hopper and like some of the Corman stuff, but even some of like the Cinema Nova stuff, and it just like it's a movie I made with my buddy Chris Blim, who's produced it with me. He wrote it with me and stars in it, and then wrote it with my friend Marcus too. So we were all kind of a writing team and worked together to make this crazy movie that's going to come out.
I kind of fell in love with that premise as you like said it out loud. I kind of just like, this sounds awesome, and I also like that 60s counterculture stuff, and I'm aiming to like read a lot more about it and whatnot, and I just fell in love with what the words that were coming out of your mouth, so I'm really excited about this now.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a weird movie. We didn't, like I think, it's gonna be cool. I'm sure when it comes out, maybe me and the actor Blim can come on and talk about it more up to the release. But no, it's cool. James Cromwell is an executive producer on it. And he's cool. He's just like a really cool, actor activist. The farmer from Babe. But he's really cool. Like, and yeah, it's definitely a fun movie. It's definitely not like, it does get into politics. I mean, I feel like you guys have seen that, so it's like it would be hard for me to totally not get into politics. So there's like Antifa, in it. There's like there's a whole thing. I'm actually in the movie. I play the antagonist, and I'm the leader of. Yeah, it gets a little complicated, but yeah. So it's with what my role is in the film. But no, it gets into some fringe politics and stuff, which is always fun for like a psychedelic ride and all that jazz.
I was reading up when you asked us to do this podcast. I was reading that you shot it all on an iPhone.
Yeah. We did shoot it on an iPhone. Mostly Blim and I, the actor and the producer, and we just kind of went and actually Francis Ford Coppola, I like bothered him a lot, his lawyer, to like talk to him once. I was like, oh, please, can I speak to Francis Ford Coppola? He's like, go away. And I was like, come on. I was emailing him. So I was like younger, but so I was able to actually get advice from him, like I was saying earlier, and he was saying like, oh, you should shoot something on an iPhone, and he was like rambling on about iPhone. So it was like it was cool. Like iPhone. The reason why it worked is because it worked on a logistical level. Is because we were able to just shoot anywhere. Like we didn't have a crew. It was literally just like me and Blim, and we would just have I would have like audio in the backpack and like camera, and it was just so really everywhere's. It's like when the French New Wave, they were like, oh, the set's outside. Like the movie studios like on the streets. But this is like an extreme version because you can like walk into a restaurant and just like start making a movie. It's like you don't have a crew, so it's totally different. Like there's no way to make that movie on a regular camera. I mean, there would be, but you just wouldn't get some of the stuff we got. So it does make it look a little odd. It makes it feel like it was shot on an iPhone, which I think some people are going to find very like, they're going to get turned off because they're just like not used to like the professionalism of a movie. And they might be like, what's this? But like, once you get into it, I found that people are kind of, not too distracted by it. But yeah, it was definitely a bizarre movie shooting experience. It took basically shot it over a whole summer. So
you'd mentioned earlier when we were talking about what we're going to be doing, how did COVID hurt the release of this Money Fascism in some sort of
I mean, I don't know. It was a weird like week to come out. I think it was like March. I think it was right around this time. I mean, so I didn't even know what was going on. I was so concerned about just like the entire world collapsing that I just was like, I don't know what's going on with that. So I kind of just figured like, okay, why not? I'm going to try to get some people to see it. Got some weird stuff in there. Maybe some people will respond to it and dig it. So I figured I'd reach out. But yeah, it was like, it's a small movie. I mean, there was no big release. I had another movie that was coming out in March of last year, but that was I co-produced it. I didn't write or direct any of it. Just more of a way behind the scenes role. And that came out in March, but that movie had like 25 city theatrical. Like it was like this is a small thing that, it was essentially just VOD. So people could, I figured, why not? People can just go see it whenever. So I'm going to try to get it out there a little bit more and see who responds to it. Maybe it'll get more people into like doing experimental films, kind of doing more political stuff, you know, just maybe being inspired to shoot something that's not necessarily like a bigger budget thing, but maybe just something they can go and mess around with their buddies, you know.
I think like a decent question. What do you think about the state of like? I think last question we'll do. What do you think about the state of modern like indie filmmaking? Where do you think it? What do you think about where it's at right now?
I think I'm the most excited. Like most people, I don't know. Some people get like, they're like, oh, it's movies are dead. I think there's an explosion of new voices. There's actual, genuine like diversity in films. There's stories being told. I mean, you got you just had a movie about you know, the Black Panthers. That was like a real movie about it. That was a studio movie. I mean, so you're seeing studio movies. You're just seeing a lot of new content and new films, and I think it's great. I think there maybe is probably a big oversaturation of there's a lot of movies, so it's difficult to kind of find the movies, and I think we're just going to have to adapt to that. But I think there's a lot of movies being made, and people should be really optimistic. I think cinema is kind of is in the process of having a pretty new big boom of not only the type of projects that are made and who's making them, but the what substance they're saying, like real films that are trying to challenge us and as an audience, as a collective society, and what we do as individuals to help. And I think deeply on this, because I genuinely am very optimistic about some of the films that are coming out. You know, as for me, it's like I really root for just like a healthy film industry. Like I like the idea of it succeeding as a whole. It's like, so I really root for just it kind of working out. But I am seeing evidence of a lot of just great stuff being made. I think there's more. The COVID thing was obviously very scary from an industry standpoint, especially in terms of some indie films, because some films are reliant on the competition between the streamers and box office. But I think that's coming back. I don't think movies or theaters are dead forever, and like we're all just going to live in this VR world. Like, you know, maybe one day, but like not right now. So it's like, so yeah, I'm very optimistic. I think the state of the industry is very interesting right now. There's so many new voices coming out. There's so many different. The most important thing is there's new stories being told, because before, you look at the Oscars, you know, in the 90s, you're just like, okay, how many these types of movies do we need? It's like, you know, Out of Africa, and like Drive Miss Daisy, like you know, it's just like there's just these like ridiculous movies. But like, and now of course I think in the 60s had a lot of cool films. Like Midnight Cowboy, I think is one of the best, you know, American movies ever made. And you know, stuff like that. But like, things were getting boring for a while, and I just feel like you're starting to see actual, you know, just different types of stories being told, and it's good. You know, I think it's really good that we get different world views, because the movies, like what Roger Ebert would call them, is like a movie is like a machine, a empathy machine. So if we're getting the fact that we're getting now stories from different, you know, cultures and people from different parts of the world, we're really starting to use the analogy of like the campfire more effectively. We're like, oh, what's your experience like? What's your experience like? That's a real amazing, true sense of like multicultural, like of really like learning from one another and being more at one with each other and all that kind of stuff. So I really think that there's reason to be really positive about all this stuff.
I think you hit the nail on the head on what the very roundabout way of the question I was going to ask. So, and also we've talked about Robert Ebert so much, so it's a good thing that he's made it's like checklist for an episode.
Yeah, I think that's like a very great statement to make. Like, it's always like that's the great thing. We're getting these stories that like you couldn't tell in the 60s or like this. It's certain in the 80s and whatnot. You're getting more like, I think the rise of like Afrofuturism is like a big thing. I picked up a book a little while ago that was described to me as silk punk, which I'm really excited to read once I get through my damn book pile. And it's just like a beautiful thing about like smaller filmmaking is like you can get that little bit of, it's a little bit easier to like do like, obviously not easy, but it's sometimes easier to do it on your own than to beg some rich white guy to get you to tell your story. That's
Exactly. Yeah, and some or you know, some company that has who's a subsidiary of some multinational corporate. I mean, it's just the idea of the art versus commerce thing just starts really coming to a head. It starts just to just really actually show that, like, well, there's only so much you can do when you're dealing with this type of system. But no, I think there are a lot of good people in there to kind of changing this, and I think it's cool. Like, there's a lot of, like, it's not just great new like directors, but there's great new like producers. Like Ryan Coogler's become like a great producer in a sense that he's really it's kind of like Coppola. I mean, he reminds me of that, because Coppola would not only direct these amazing films, but he'd also produce a lot of films and have other filmmakers be like propelled up. So I think there's just a lot of interesting stuff going on. But yeah, no, I think and I think for like midnight films, since obviously you guys are into that, I think that's just impossible to like get like. I think it's always going to be at the same level. It's just like it's got its own little weird thing going on, which I think is awesome. Like Mondo is obviously like the thing we were talking about today doesn't feel as much like a midnight. I think Mondo is definitely more like a midnight film. I mean, it's kind of meant to be a little bit like weird and kind of just like goofy. But we still really believe in a lot of stuff we're saying behind it. But like I think that type of movie just won't ever go away and change you into much, because it is just some nutty person who just like wants to tell their bizarre story and will just get it out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta know where to look nowadays, and that's something we're adjusting to. I don't think we're fully there yet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So just to go back there for a second on Mondo Hollywoodland before we wrap up, was it like a choice to do it on an iPhone, or like did you just have an iPhone on?
Yeah, so after we got some advice to do it on the iPhone, I just had an iPhone, and that actually just made it a lot easier, because once again, it was like the whole budget of the movie is pretty low, so it's like especially when I first started, it was really just me by myself walking around LA and shooting stuff, and I was like, maybe I can make this bizarre thing a movie, and then I was like, maybe I'll get an actor. I mean, it really started to evolve weirdly, and then when I met the lead actor, that's when it really turned into like, okay, we're gonna make this like movie, and like really a script and all that stuff. So like, but no, the iPhone kind of was like way before, because I already started shooting stuff, because I was able to just do it when I was walking around. Like when I was bored, I would just walk around Hollywood. So I just started shooting stuff with my phone and then putting it in Final Cut. And I was like, well, we're just going to shoot on the iPhone now. And then people were kind of like, yeah, no, it's a good idea. So yeah, I mean, it's like I always say, like logistically, I don't think we would be able to do it if it wasn't an iPhone. But so it just made it very like more freeing,
Well, this has been a great conversation. I think we'll wrap up here. I guess just final. Janek, you want to just give them a final reminder where they can find you? I don't know what you have for social media. Or probably should have followed you on Twitter or something. But yeah.
So you can find me. You can find me on Instagram, Janek Ambros, Janek Ambros, and then also if you want to follow my company account, just follow me us on Instagram. It's Assembly Line Ent, like entertainment, Assembly Line Ent, and Janek Ambros. And you can look at it, because we got a lot of cool, movies coming up. Like we got a documentary we did in Ecuador from this great Ecuadorian director. Like another movie from Diana Zuros. It's like more of an indie film that was playing at CineQuest, this week. So we got some cool, stuff coming up the pipeline. So definitely feel free to check out our page.
So yeah, we'll see it. This has been like a nice little thing, and we'll see the rest of the audience next week with the season premiere of season 3 of Kyle and Cody's Cult Cinema Cast, with our review of the 90s Avengers film, because Cody really wanted to review that.
No, okay.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Recording.
Cool.